I continue my true crime. I don't want to say spree because I'm not doing anything criminal. Binge, let's say. And last night I watched a really fascinating documentary called The Act of Killing. And when I tell you the premise of the documentary, you're probably not going to say that that's true crime. Um, it's more like history. But anyway, in Indonesia from 1965 to 1966, there were it was a period of mass killings of communists, of ethnic Chinese. So basically what happened is that it was a transition period between two governments. One government which was pretty authoritarian but was propped up by the army and the Communist Party of Indonesia. And then it led to another government which was also very authoritarian, but it was more anti-communist. And this coup was supported by the British and by the Americans. Because if you can picture where Indonesia is, so you have like China, Vietnam, Cambodia, and then here is Indonesia, and then down here is Australia. So obviously, they don't want to have a communist country next door. It wasn't fully communist, it was the previous government was just supported by the communists. So there was a coup, and the coup was blamed on communists. So after that coup, the violence began, and uh, so that's the events which led to the making of this documentary many, many years later. So the guy who made the documentary, his name was Oppenheimer, actually. Not no connection to the Oppenheimer, the famous one. He's just a documentary maker. But not just, he is a documentary maker. He's not a famous physicist. So he was doing another documentary, and he was interviewing a lot of people, and people who were connected to this particular period and people who had murdered people seemed to be quite proud of what they did. So he was like, how can I examine what happened? So, and this is the premise of the documentary, is that he went to these people and he's like, why not make a movie about what you did? So the the documentary follows the the process of making this movie, and you never actually see the movie that they're making. It doesn't look like it's a very good movie, but the the people who are involved in it, they really think that it's important, and they have some like really absurd parts. There's one guy who's in drag for some reason that's never explained, but then they have like people who are being murdered, and then they have like this scene of I don't know. I guess it's in heaven, and this one guy who got executed is like, "Thank you for killing me because now I'm in heaven." So it's really, really, really bizarre. But the the actual it works effectively because the documentary maker is focusing on them making the movie, and then he's able to ask questions like, how did you kill people? How do you feel about it? Maybe not even so directly. Um, and it's interesting because so after this period there was a 30-year dictatorship, and nobody talked about this time. So none of these people were punished for what they did, and in fact they were celebrated for what they did. And they have kind of different reactions to it. The documentary focuses on this guy who seems to have remorse, but he's also happy that people are talking to him. He says he can't sleep because of the nightmares that he has connected to these killings that he did, which is understandable because the killings that he did were quite graphic. And later he's interviewed on Indonesian TV, and the documentary uh, maker, Oppenheimer, is, I'm not sure if it was him, but his camera, uh, they're not focusing on him being interviewed, and that's a crazy interview as well because, oh, you killed some communists, yay! Um, but behind the scenes, the camera is on this one lady who is like like, I don't know what you call the people who are, queuing up things on live television, and she says something like, "How many people did he kill?" And the other person is like, "Oh, about 1,000." 1,000 people? It's crazy that he's on television. And yeah, yeah, and the other guy's like, yeah, most of these guys went crazy or rich and crazy, you know. So I think it's an interesting way to approach this topic because, and I think that it's useful because you really see how these ordinary people were, and they were just like normal gangsters, right? Like they had a small time hustle of, scalping tickets for movies, and then the government came along and said, hey, or the military said, hey, we need some help, kill these people. And they're like, yeah, okay, okay, we'll kill them. And so you can see how the banality of evil is that these are like normal people. And I think the they're normal people, and they realize now, and maybe they realized then, that the people that they were killing were also normal people. There's this scene where they are like about to burn down a village, this paramilitary, they're not really burning down, but they're reenacting it for the movie. And the leader of the paramilitary group is like, whoa, wait, we looked horrible. We looked so bloodthirsty. Yeah, we have to kill people, but it's not like we want to. And it's really kind of crazy. And then the guy who was like the conscience of the movie says something like, wow, you know, I I can't imagine what those kids went through and how much they hate us, probably. Yeah, and he had some problems after this movie was released because they didn't talk about this in Indonesia, right? They didn't talk about it at all because the dictatorship happened and a lot of those people were still involved in politics and stuff, and there's still like a high level of corruption. There's a scene where one gangster is going around and he's like demanding protection money from ethnic Chinese people. So China was like really upset by that, obviously. And yeah, the conscience of the film, I keep forgetting what his name is, but he's like this sweet old man now, but he killed about 1,000 people, and he reenacts somebody being tortured, and he's like, I kind of get it now. I kind of understand what these people went through. And he asks the director, like, did these people feel the same way that I did then? And the director's like, no, guy, they felt a lot worse because they knew they were going to die. He's like, yeah, but I still understand how they feel. Because, yeah, he never looked at it from their perspective. Yeah, what I wanted to say earlier, but I got caught on a tangent, is that the the thing that's great about this movie is it shows these people not as monsters, because we tend to make our enemies into monsters, and that's exactly what happened uh, here, right? In Indonesia, they treated the communists as like this big faceless monster because of propaganda reasons, whatever. And so if a person happened to be communist, then they deserved to die because communists were monsters, right? So it's so easy to fall into that thinking. And so I think that this is a good documentary for people, not just people who are interested in Indonesia, but people who are generally interested in politics. Like, I think Americans right now should really watch this film. Because I'm not saying that that's where they're headed, but the rhetoric is just getting worse and worse, And when the rhetoric gets extreme, it's not long before actions get extreme as well. Yeah, I can't think of anything else to talk about this movie, but if you haven't watched it, please check it out. It's called The Act of Killing, and I think it's on, I don't know where it's on. It's called The Act of Killing because I think it's pretty old now. It's like pretty old. It's like it's like 10 years old. Yeah, so what did you think about this? Have you watched the movie? Leave your comments in the comments section. Thank you. Bye-bye.